What if I told you that once a year, an Amish woman opens her home to 200 people, feeds every single one of them, cleans up afterward, and spends less than $100 doing it, not because she cut corners, but because she never needed to spend more? Church comes to your home. In Amish communities across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, there are no church buildings. Services are held in the homes and barns of members, rotating through the district on a schedule that brings church to every family roughly once a year. When your turn arrives, you are not simply hosting a gathering. You are responsible for the worship service, the seating of up to 200 people, and the meal that follows. The kitchen becomes the center of everything, and the woman of the house runs it. Shiru. 200 people sitting down to eat is not a number most home cooks ever face. For an Amish woman hosting church, it is an ordinary annual event. A typical Old Order church district contains between 25 and 40 families. When they gather for a bi-weekly service, the attendance, adults, teenagers, and children included, regularly reaches 150 to 200 people, and in larger districts, more. There are no catering companies, no rented warming trays, no delivery orders placed the night before. Every item on the table was made in that kitchen, from ingredients that came from that farm, that cellar, or that community, planned and prepared across the days leading up to Sunday morning. The menu. The Amish church meal is not designed to impress. It is designed to feed, and to do so without creating competition between households. The menu is standardized across most church districts precisely for this reason. A family with fewer resources should not feel shame when their turn comes, and a family with more resources should not use the meal as a display. What goes on the table is the same in nearly every home. Homemade bread and buns, peanut butter spread, cheese or cheese spread, cold cuts, home-canned pickles, pickled beets, coffee, and dessert in the form of pie or cookies. Some plainer communities, particularly the Swartzentruber Amish, serve a simple bean soup in place of the spread and cold cuts. The simplicity is not an accident. It is a rule, quietly enforced by the fact that everyone already knows what the meal is supposed to look like. 40 loaves bread. Bread is the foundation of the Amish church meal. Everything else on the table exists alongside it, but bread is what fills the plate and the person. For a gathering of 200, a hosting family will typically bake between 30 and 50 loaves, a figure that would stop most modern home cooks entirely. It does not stop an Amish woman. Bread baking at this scale is not a crisis. It is a Saturday task, begun early in the morning and finished by afternoon, using a wood-burning or propane oven that has no temperature dial and requires a practiced hand to read. The recipe is not written down. It exists in memory, passed from mother to daughter across generations without ever being committed to paper. The loaves are baked in sequence, cooled on racks, wrapped in cloth, and set aside. By the time Sunday morning arrives, the bread is ready. The cost per loaf, made from bulk flour and home-rendered lard, is a fraction of anything bought at a store. The peanut butter. Of all the items on the Amish church table, the peanut butter spread is the one most remembered by anyone who has eaten it. It is called church spread, and it appears at virtually every Old Order Sunday meal, regardless of region or district. The recipe is simple: peanut butter, marshmallow cream, and a sweetener, either molasses, Caro syrup, or a cooked sugar syrup made from brown sugar, white sugar, and water. The proportions vary by family, but the result is always the same: a sweet, thick, pale spread that goes onto bread or buns and serves as the centerpiece of the meal. What makes it remarkable from a cost standpoint is how far it goes. A large batch made from bulk peanut butter and basic pantry ingredients feeds dozens of people for a few dollars. The Amish buy peanut butter in large commercial containers from bulk food stores, a network of discount dry goods suppliers that exists specifically to serve plain communities. 50 pounds of peanut butter costs far less per ounce than anything sold in a grocery store jar. The spread is made the day before, stored in crocks or large bowls, and brought to the table in quantities that ensure no one leaves without enough. Besides bread, the rest of the church meal table fills in around the bread and spread in layers that are modest by design. Cheese is present at most meals, either sliced hard cheese or a soft cheese spread made from melted white American cheese, which some attendees consider the best part of the entire meal. Cold cuts appear in many districts, typically a simple bologna or lunch meat bought in bulk or cured at home. Neither the cheese nor the meat is served in elaborate quantity. The portions are plain and sufficient, not generous in the way a feast would be. Alongside these sit the items that require 220 words. No cooking on the day itself, pretzels in some settlements, crackers in others. Coffee is brewed in large quantities and served black. Water is available. There are no soft drinks, no juice, no alternatives. The drink menu is as simple as the food menu. What strikes outside observers about the Amish church table is not that it is sparse, the quantities are large enough to fill 200 people, but that it is entirely without decoration or flourish. Every item serves a function. Nothing is there to be looked at. The table is built to feed a congregation, and that is the only standard it is measured against. Home canned pickles. The pickles and pickled beets that appear on the church meal table were not purchased the week before. They were canned in summer, when cucumbers and beets came out of the garden in quantities that the family could not eat fresh. Every Amish household with a garden produces far more than it consumes in season. The surplus goes into jars. The jars go into the cellar. And when church comes, the cellar is where the hosting woman goes first. Pickled beets are a fixture of the Amish church meal across nearly every district and affiliation. They are made from garden beets cooked and packed in a sweet vinegar brine, then processed in a water bath canner and stored at room temperature for months. The pickles, typically cucumber, dill, or bread and butter style, follow the same process. Both are made in batches of dozens of jars over the course of a summer afternoon. The cost of producing them is nearly zero for a family that grows its own vegetables and reuses its canning jars year after year. What sits on the church table Sunday morning was essentially free to produce. The labor happened in August. The result appears in November. This gap between the work and the meal is one of the core reasons the Amish church meal costs so little, because much of the food was already paid for in time, not money, months before the hosting date arrived. The pie question. Dessert at an Amish church meal is either pie or cookies, and the question of how many is a logistical one that the hosting woman has usually already solved before Saturday arrives. For a gathering of 200, the standard expectation is somewhere between 20 and 30 pies, depending on the size of the district and the age distribution of the congregation. Children eat less. Older members sometimes skip dessert, but the hosting family does not bake all of the pies alone. One of the quiet systems that operates around every church hosting is the informal network of neighbors and close friends who offer to contribute. A neighbor brings 4 pies. A sister-in-law bakes 6. A close friend arrives Saturday afternoon with a tin of cookies and a covered dish. This network is not organized through any formal coordination. It operates through the same unspoken mutual understanding that governs barn raisings and harvest. Help you contribute when someone else is carrying a heavy load, because one day the load will be yours. The pies themselves are made from fruit that was preserved in summer apple, cherry, or peach filling canned in jars, or from pantry staples like choufle pie, which requires only molasses, brown sugar, flour, and eggs. In Lancaster County, snitz pie made from dried apples is traditional at church meals. The ingredients are cheap. The skill required to produce 20 pies on a Saturday is not something that can be bought. It is accumulated over a lifetime. Carry the load of the sheep. No Amish woman hosts church entirely on her own. The meal may be her responsibility, but the community understands that feeding 200 people is beyond what one household can absorb without help. The help arrives in forms that are so habitual they are rarely discussed. In the days before church, close friends and female relatives appear at the hosting home to assist with baking, cleaning, and preparation. They come without being asked in most cases, because the expectation is understood by everyone who has hosted before and will host again. On Sunday morning itself, A group of women arrives early before the service begins to arrange the tables, set out the food, and ensure that everything is in place before the congregation sits down. After the meal, the same women remain to clear the tables, wash the dishes, and return the house to order. The work is distributed in a way that makes an enormous task feel manageable. The hosting woman does not need to hire anyone because the community is the labor. This is not unique to the church meal. It is the same principle that operates at barn raisings, harvests, and butchering days. The Amish model of mutual aid means that no single family bears the full weight of a community obligation alone. The cost to the hosting family stays low, in part because they are not paying for the hours of work that go into the meal. Those hours are given freely with the understanding that they will be returned in kind. The seating system. 200 people cannot sit down to eat at the same moment in a farmhouse. The Amish have a seating system for the church meal that has been in place for generations and operates without confusion because everyone already knows their position in it. The oldest men eat first. They are seated at the tables, which are the church benches, flipped and laid flat with boards across them, covered in tablecloths, and served before anyone else. When they finish, they rise, the table is reset, and the next group sits. The order moves from oldest to youngest, with men and women typically eating in separate seatings or separate rooms. Children eat last, or in their own informal arrangement, often standing at a smaller table near the kitchen. The system exists for practical reasons. Space in a farmhouse is limited, and the bench tables can only seat so many at once, but it also reflects the Amish understanding of community hierarchy. Age carries respect, and that respect is expressed in something as ordinary as who eats first. The women who cook the meal often eat last, after the tables have been cleared and reset multiple times. They eat standing, sometimes in the kitchen, between the final washing of dishes. There is no complaint about this arrangement. It is simply how it has always been done. By the time the last shift finishes eating, the meal that took days to prepare has been consumed in a matter of hours, and the process of cleaning and returning the house to normal has already begun. The Amish church meal is cheap because it was designed to be cheap, and it has stayed that way because the design has never been questioned. Every element of the meal, the bread, the spread, the pickles, the pie, was chosen for reasons that have nothing to do with flavor and everything to do with function. It feeds a large number of people. It can be made from ingredients produced on or near the farm. It requires no refrigeration on the day of serving. It can be prepared across multiple days without any single day becoming impossible. And it costs the same whether the hosting family is prosperous or struggling, because the menu is fixed and the community fills the gaps. The dollar figure, often cited as somewhere between $50 and $100 for a full church meal in a mid-sized district, reflects the small amount of purchased goods that go into the meal. Bulk peanut butter, purchased cold cuts, commercial cheese bought in large blocks. Everything else came from the cellar, the garden, the oven, or a neighbor's kitchen. What the meal actually costs, measured honestly, includes the hours of labor across the week, the jars of preserves put up in summer, the flour bought in 50-pound bags months earlier, and the community time contributed by a dozen women who asked for nothing in return. Measured that way, it costs something significant, but none of that cost appears on a receipt, and that is exactly the point. The Amish church meal does not cost less because the Amish are poor. It costs less because they built a system specifically designed to make it so.